All right. I'm a little bit early. It's not quite at the top of the hour. Anyway, I thought I'd get started just now. Welcome, everyone. There are a few viewers already. Thanks for joining us today again. This is another round of certification quiz questions for the AWS Solutions Architect Associate. And I would say let's just wait a few more minutes for a few folks to join us. If you want, in the chat, say hi, let me know that you're there. And I'm about to set everything up here. Let's see if it works. It does on, yeah, getting an echo. It works on YouTube. Hey, Pankai. How do you pronounce that? Pankai or Pankaj? I think it's Pankaj. I'm not sure. Let me know. Is it Pankai or Pankaj? And Twitch works as well. That's great. Cool. All right. Second one, Pankaj. Cool. Thumbless, coffee in hand. I've got my glass of water. Looks interesting with the green screen. Yeah, nice. I got a cup of coffee here as well, but that's empty already, unfortunately. So who else is here? 7 people on the chat already. Nice to see you all. Thank you so much for joining. I can close this. Let me see. And I will do something different today, but I'm going to present that once we'll get started. So let's just wait a few more minutes for everybody else to come in. So Thumbless, Pankaj, welcome. Anybody else? If you just want to lurk, that's fine as well. You don't have to respond. I'd just like to know if you're there. If anybody, we have a number of familiar faces who regularly join. I wasn't able to broadcast last week. I didn't do a stream last week. I'm sorry if anybody waited for that. I had a lot of work to do. We had the EMEA summit this week, in the EMEA region, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We had a large summit, our yearly event in the Geo, where we had 2 days of keynotes and lots of sessions across all kinds of topics. I might even post the link if you want. Where is it? Here we go. Because all of the sessions are still available on demand. So this is, oh, that's not the link. All the sessions are available on demand and free of charge. Here we go. Here we go. Hey, Debashi. That was the AWS EMEA Summit. AWS EMEA Summit. More than 200 sessions around all kinds of topics. So if you're interested, you can register free of charge and still watch the all the sessions on demand. It's been 2 days, was 2 exciting days. I spent a lot of time preparation because for the first time ever, we also had tracks in different languages, not just English. We also had German and Hebrew and French, English, everything. I was responsible for the German track, and that was a lot of fun preparing that, finding speakers and everything. So that's really interesting. Have a look if you want. Yosan, welcome. Good to see you again. Good morning. What time is it at your place, Yosan? And everybody, let me know, where are you from? I'm here in Germany. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon over here in the north of Germany. We have beautiful weather, and I'm really looking forward to after the stream, because then I'm done for the rest of the week. I'm going into my weekend. Let me know, where are you from in the chat. It's a little past 3, so I would say Scotland. Bruce. Bruce Melvin, welcome. Great to see you. Scotland. I must admit, I'm having a really hard time understanding if somebody speaks with a Scottish accent, but I love it. I love to hear it. It sounds so awesome, but it's hard for me to understand. Multi-Skill Services is from Pakistan. Pankaj is joining from India. Yosan is joining from Houston in Texas. So it's pretty early where you are right now, I think. What are you? Are you Pacific time or a different time zone? I don't know exactly. Arizona, USA, 6 a.m. So it's 3 over here right now. That's 9 hours. Well, that's Pacific time, right? 6 a.m. 8 a.m. That's not Pacific. Definitely not. The video is available in the next 2 weeks. Yes, it is. Siva Balan, you're from India. Oh, Central Time. Yeah, Yosan is in Central Time. I don't really know about the states more. Not at the coast. What's happening with my video? I think my video just froze. Give me a minute. Give me a second. I'll see what that is. Just 1 second. I'm not sure. Let me see. Something's odd. It's every time when you need it, technology. When you need it, it doesn't work. Now where is it? Okay, it's frozen in OBS 2. Let me see. All right, let me see. Just 1 second. I'll be right back. I'm really sorry about that. Let's see. I hope you can still hear me. Can you let me know in the chat just real quick if you can still hear me at least? Yes, okay, you can hear me, but you can't see me. There's something. That's good. That's good because I can't get my camera back up. Let me see. Turn that off. I'm really sorry. I'll be right back. I'll be back in a second. I'll put on the banner, this one real quick so you can see something. Now let's see. Turn the camera back on. Oh, it doesn't give me the camera feed anymore. Something's odd. Ah, crap. I mean, I've got this camera here. Wait a second. Give me a second. So, yeah, that doesn't work. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I don't get the camera to work again. Shoot. We'll do it without camera. Let me see. Maybe I can get it back up. Just 1 second again. I'll try it once more. And if, yeah, I did it turn it on and off again. I did that, and I'm gonna turn it off again, and I'm gonna plug it out, and plug it back in, and plug the other wire back in, and now I'm going to turn it back on. I'm turning it back on. I'm really sorry. That's my camera doesn't work anymore, or rather, I'm not sure. Let me see. Let's turn this off. Turn this off. I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry about that. Okay. Now, I can't see something. I'm back. I'm back. Wait, I got it. Okay, something quit unexpectedly. I'll remove this. Now you can see me again. It's without chroma key. Turn that back on. And I'm totally blurry because the autofocus probably, yeah, that looks funny. That looks funny. Here we go. And now let me fix the focus real quick. I'm sorry. Here we go. Ah, look at that. The autofocus for some reason the autofocus dropped. All right. So I'm back. Look at this. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about that. Let me have a look at the chat real quick to spawn a new container, right? And you're good. There I am. Vikas, great to see you. Tanya, it's great to see you here. You're in Germany as well, right? If I remember correctly, somewhere in Frankfurt. Actually, my sister and her family lives near Frankfurt. All right. What I'm gonna do now is we spent some time already, so I'm jumping. I'm gonna jump right in. So if you can't see that, I hope you do. I will start and go through 6 questions today. Ja, du bist in Frankfurt. Yeah, nice. I'm in Hamburg. I'm near Hamburg. Great to see you all. So you're saying you used to live in Kassel. That's nice. Okay, cool. Let's just get started. What I'm going to do today, I'm not going to have a raffle today, but there, audio sync, I don't know. Do you have an audio sync issue? What's that? Let me see. Let me look at YouTube real quick, and I'm going to listen to it. Sync issue? I'll put it on my headphones. No, it looks like so from my perspective, when I look at YouTube, it looks right. Not sure. Let me see. Same on Twitch. So it seems to work. Seems to work again. I hope it does. I'm really sorry about the technical issues. It's always something. Okay, cool. So for everybody who has a sync issue, maybe just reload the page, reload the video. Maybe that helps. Or try a different browser. Well, let's get started. We've been spending some time with me struggling with technology. What we're going to do today, I'm not going to have a raffle today. However, you still will all get a chance to win AWS credits. And I'm going to start with the first questions. I'll do it as we did in the past. I will ask the question with all the answers, and then I'm going to ask the chat. I'm going to ask you if you have the right answer or what do you think the right answer may be. And I might have a few questions around that. And then I'm going to explain why the correct answer is correct and why the other ones aren't. And we have to get through 6 questions today. So I'm going to start right now. So the first question is, how are EBS snapshots backed up to Amazon S3? So EBS stands for Elastic Block Store. A full backup according to the backup policy set on the volume. B, synchronously. C, incrementally. Or D, EBS volumes are not backed up to S3. What do you think, chat? A, B, C, or D? Let me know in the chat. So Pankaj says C, incrementally. Anybody else? Any ideas? What do you think? What do you think? Let me see. I'll just skip ahead a little bit. C, incrementally. Yeah, right, exactly. Just skip ahead a little bit in the video. Ooh, and that's what it says, right? But what does that actually mean in practice? And this is an important thing to know. If you make a snapshot, if you make an EBS snapshot, the first one will be the whole snapshot, the whole backup. If you make a second one, it will be a layer on top, but only with the differences. So the second snapshot won't take as much space as the first one, as it only contains the differences. So that makes it easy to really have multiple backups and make many backups with a very tight cadence. Make many backups so that you have many points in time to jump back to without needing all the space. It's always only the differences. So it's being incrementally backed up. So you have the first increment, which is the entire backup. Then you have the second increment, which only contains the differences, and the third, and so forth. But do you know what happens if you delete one of the backups, one of an older backup? What happens if you delete the backup, chat? Let me know in the chat if you have an idea, or maybe just an assumption of what happens, because the first one contains the entire backup, the second one a diff, the third one a diff. What happens if you delete the first backup, the one with everything? Because that would mean, essentially, it would mean you lose all the data and you only have the diffs left. Or what do you think? Anybody? Do you have an idea of what happens? I mean, one of the important things is with backups, at some point in time, you don't need the oldest ones. So you can use Amazon S3 lifecycle policies to make sure that backups as snapshots, once they are a certain amount of days old, that they get archived or maybe even deleted. But if you delete the oldest one, it's basically the first with everything, the question is, are you going to lose everything? And of course you're not, because what happens if you take the first backup, the first layer, the first increment, and the second increment on top of it, and you delete the first, before it's being deleted, it's being merged with the second one, and the second one then represents all the data. And the same happens if you delete one of the backups in between. It's gonna merge the deleted one with the next one on top, so that you have all the differences between the previous one and the next one in one diff. So whenever you delete something, whenever you delete a snapshot, they will be merged in a way that you are always able to get the whole backup back. And that's really important. That's really important to know. So that's the first thing, incrementally. Thank you so much for your answers. I'll go right to the next questions. However, if you have any questions, yeah, right, Navdeep, exactly. We don't lose any data because it's being merged. If you have any questions, if anything is unclear as I explain it, please let me know in the chat. I'm going to jump to the next question real quick. Question number 2. What type of replication occurs in a multi-AZ RDS setup? 1, sequential replication. B, synchronous replication. C, asynchronous replication. Or D, synchronous replication for full backups and asynchronous replication for incremental backups. What do you think? A, B, C, or D? Let me know in the chat. Which one is it? What type of replication occurs in a multi-AZ RDS setup? B, B, C, C, B. B stands for synchronous. C stands for asynchronous. Yes, D, synchronous replication for full backups, asynchronous replication for incremental backups. We got Tanya says B, B. Okay, cool. So the correct answer is it depends. I'm sorry, it really does in this case. Usually it is B. So the correct answer, I will go through the meaning of all. I'll do that, Navdeep, no problem. So the correct answer is B. However, there's a point where RDS with non-Aurora databases does a synchronous replication, and RDS with Aurora, our own database, does an asynchronous replication. And I think Yeah, read replicas are async. That's right, Bruce. In this case, this is a multi-AC setup, which is a different thing. Someone in the chat, let me see, who was it? Yes, right. Ahmed. I don't know. Ahmed, are you here? If you are, shout out to you because you got it. You got it exactly right. Non-Aurora, synchronous replicate. Oh, you can't read that, I think. Let's make that bigger. Oh, here we go. And you can see on the right, I'm playing a lot of Satisfactory right now. All right. So where are the commands? Here we go. So here we go. So we've got non-Aurora has synchronous replication, and Aurora has asynchronous replication, and Ahmed got it right. And I'm going to go through, just one second. I'm going to go through all 4 options and tell you what they mean. And for some reason, my computer is getting really slow right now. I'm not sure why that is. I'm really sorry. Today's a bad day, I guess. It's just too warm outside. So please in the chat, let me know if you can see me, if you cannot see me, if there are some issues. I'm having some issues right now. Everything's getting really slow. Yeah, I need to use the cloud. That's the thing. All right. So, okay, I think it works again. There was something eating up memory, and I closed a few things. So the screen is really blurry. I hope it gets better now. Something was eating up my memory. I hope it's getting better. So I'm going through it. So the multi-AC RDS setup. First of all, what is that? That means it is a disaster. It's basically a high availability option to use with your RDS, with the Relational Database Service database. And this is going to deploy multiple instances of your database in multiple availability zones. That's multi-AC RDS. Sequential replication doesn't make any sense. This is just to confuse you. This doesn't make any sense. Sequential replication doesn't mean anything in that case. Synchronous replication means that whenever there's a change in the main database, so the one that's being written to, the change is synchronously replicated to the secondary instance. So it's basically one transaction across both instances, or both across all the instances. It takes a little more time, but between AZs, we have low latency connections, so it works quite well. It becomes an issue once you start replicating across regions. Then because it's a complete transaction, it's a single transaction across all the instances, the more latency you have between the instances, the longer the transaction takes. And this makes it really difficult. However, between AZs, between availability zones, the replication goes extremely quickly because we have very high bandwidth wiring between the availability zones. And so synchronous replication means whenever something changes in the main database, it's automatically synchronously changed in the secondary instances as well. So that's what synchronous means. And that's how it works with non-Aurora RDS databases. The second thing is, or the third option, C, is asynchronous replication. And that means the change or new data is written to the main database, and then the transaction is done. And in the back end, then the system will take care of replicating this change to the secondary databases. So the transaction doesn't involve all the instances. It only involves the one instance that is being written to, and it's asynchronously replicated to the other instances. This, as I said, in general, it's extremely quick. If it's between availability zones, it takes a little more time between regions. Someone said, yeah, Bruce said async for read replicas. And read replicas, and this is very important for the exam as well. Read replicas are for a different use case. We have multi-AZ RDS setups, and we have read replicas. Multi-AZ is for high availability, and read replicas are for scalability. So with a read replica, you have one main database that you can write to, and you have many read replicas for those reading from the database. If you have many more reads to the database, or if you're spread geographically and you want low latency to the user, you replicate the data into read replicas, but people cannot, or applications cannot directly write into the read replicas. They only can write into the main database, and it's being replicated to the read replicas asynchronously. That's the difference. And the fourth one, desynchronous replication for full backups and asynchronous replication for incremental backups. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense at all, because backups and replication don't have anything to do with each other. Backups are incremental, replications are synchronous or asynchronous, but they don't have anything to do with backups. And Pankaj, yes, exactly right. If it's asynchronous, it is eventually consistent. What does that mean? It means that you have an important factor in any application is consistency throughout the application, so that when different people look at the same data, that they actually see the same data. And if the data change, that everybody sees the change data. And eventual consistency means that there can be a little bit of a latency between the data being changed and every user seeing the data. So it's eventually consistent at some point in time, not long after the actual mutation of the data. It is consistent throughout this system. However, in a distributed application, like many, especially if they are globally running on a global basis or across multiple regions, distributed transactions are really hard and prone to failure. So what we do in distributed systems is we use eventual consistency. So we have basically a system that is the source of truth, where we change data and then it's being replicated across all the other systems. If you imagine Twitter, if you write something on Twitter, it doesn't immediately appear in all of the timelines of everybody. It takes some time for them to see it or not. Or same with Facebook. And this is something that you need to use should use in distributed applications to make sure that it can be distributed. Yeah, so that's what that means. Exactly right, Pankaj. Thanks for pointing that out. Cool. Question number 3. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the chat. Question number 3. Which of the following is a security group associated with? A, ELB, B, ENI, C, ALB, or D, NACL? And while you're giving me the response, you might also want to tell me what does the acronym of the correct answer stand for? Yosan, B. Anybody else in the chat? What do you think? Is it A, B, C, or D? B. B. Let's see, you know your stuff. Does anybody know what? Well, it's right. We have a little bit of latency, so it's hard. You have probably all have submitted your responses already. Yeah, Siva writes it. ENI, Elastic Network Interface. Security groups are associated with a virtual network interface. So basically, the network card being attached to the actual EC2 instance. And whenever you start up an EC2 instance, it automatically gets a network interface because it needs to communicate with the network. And this is the so-called ENI, the Elastic Network Interface. And every ENI is basically protected or surrounded by at least one security group. Every network interface needs to have at least one security group. And the security group is like a firewall on the network interface. So a firewall for the instance. The other things on this list, Chad, you want to tell me? Yeah, Elastic something, exactly. Elastic Network Interface. It's a network card. It's a network interface. Everybody, do you know what NACL stands for? Because that's very similar. DENACL is very similar to security group. Do you know what it stands for? NACL? Because it's another type of firewall that we use. Right, network access control list, FANROP, exactly right. Network access control list. It's another type of firewall, but this one doesn't attach to an instance or the instance's network interface. It attaches to a specific subnet. So the NACL, the network access control list, controls what goes into and out of a subnet, of the entire subnet. So for instance, for a private subnet with your database server in there, you can basically say, I don't allow any traffic except for on the database port in and out of this subnet. And with the security group, you can tell the ENI, which is attached to the actual database server, the network interface of the database server, you can tell that one that it should not allow anything, any incoming traffic that is not on the database port. So these are two layers of security. You can use either. You should use both. And that's a very important point in security in general, in information security, but especially in the cloud. We talk about security in depth. So a multi-layered approach to security, because security is hard. And it's really easy to have a misconfiguration somewhere or a vulnerability that you don't know about. And the more layers of security you have, the less likely it is that someone gets through all of them. It's like Swiss cheese. If you imagine Swiss cheese with all its holes in there, if you take a couple of slices from Swiss cheese, not all from the same block, take different pieces of Swiss cheese, take a slice of each. Each of these slices has holes, and many things that are there to protect, they still are vulnerable. There is no such thing as 100% secure. But the more of these slices of Swiss cheese you put on top of each other, the less likely it is that there is one hole going through all of them. And that's the same with security. It's a multi-layered approach where we say, okay, let's secure the instance itself by using a hardened OS, a hardened image, where SSH is turned off, where things that are not needed are not in it. So we're going to secure the instance itself, and we might even have some service on the instance running, some intrusion detection system running on the instance to make sure we know when something happens. The second thing is the firewall on the instance itself, the security group, to make sure that no unwanted traffic gets into the instance. But if there's a misconfiguration in the security, we still have the network access control list, which makes sure that unwanted traffic doesn't even get into the subnet. And then we have our web application firewall and shield and whatnot to protect ourselves. So that's really important. We have a lot of services to help you secure your application, your workload in the cloud. It's really important to understand how they work and how you can use them, and not just use one. Just recently, I compared it with cloud security is like an onion, not like an egg. An egg, traditional information security, traditional IT security works like an egg, where you have a hard shell, and if that breaks, you've got a mess. So what we did in the past in IT security is we had our IT system, and then we had our perimeter protection, where we had our passwords and our logins and everything. And once somebody was inside of the network, they could do whatever they want. That worked back in the day when everybody was working at that desk and everybody was working with a company supplied workstation. But nowadays, everybody works from home. Not everybody, but many people work from home or from on the road. Everybody has their own devices. There are so many ways to get into the network that it is not enough to just protect it on the outside, because there is no boundary, there is no outside anymore. And this is why I say cloud security or modern IT security is like an onion, where you have layers and layers and layers, and not like an egg where you have a hard shell. But if you break that hard shell, you've got a mess. It's all over the place. So anyway, that's that. The other two things on that list, A stands for elastic load balancing. And C stands for application load balancer, which is one of our elastic load balancing services. Cool. Let's have a look at the time. Looking good. Next one. If you have any questions, please let me know. All right. How many instances? And we've talked about this at a recent show. I'm sorry, where we talked about placement groups. How many instances can run in a single availability zone for a spread placement group? A1, B5, C7, D9. What do you think? A, B, C, or D? Let me know in the chat. Seven. C7, exactly right. That's right, exactly. You can have up to 7 instances in a single availability zone for a spread placement group. Does anyone remember? We have a number of different placement groups. We have spread placement groups, but we have also 2 other types. Do you remember which they are? We have placement and we have 2 others. Do you know which ones? And some of you, I will do that. Yeah, Pankaj, I can do that. I'll do that. Let me copy this one. I've got the link here. Here we go. All right. I'll go into it in a second. We've got cluster, spread, and SPC is right. We've got partition as well. And I'm going into the details real quick. I'm not going to dive too deep, because I did that, Bruce. It's partition, and I'm going through the ones. Siva, exactly right. Partition and cluster. I'm gonna go through it real quick, not too deep, because I did it in a previous show. However, we've got cluster placement groups. Make that a little larger. Hope you can read that. We've got cluster placement groups, which packs instances close together inside an availability zone. This strategy enables workloads to achieve the low latency network performance necessary for tightly coupled node-to-node communication that is typical of HPC applications. And HPC stands for high performance computing. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. This is a cluster placement group. That means each and every one of the instances in this cluster placement group are placed extremely close together, most likely on the same rack, maybe even on the same piece of hardware. Because this way, there is extremely little latency between the instances. So if you have an HPC cluster, a high performance computing cluster, where the nodes need to talk to each other all the time and send lots of data back and forth all the time, you would use a cluster placement group. The downside of a cluster placement group is, if this rack or this specific piece of hardware goes down, you lose your entire cluster. It's gone. And as you all know, everything fails all the time. So cluster cluster placement group helps you get your instances as closely together as possible, but at the same time, you lose a certain amount of availability because if this rack loses power or network connectivity or the piece of hardware breaks, which happens, you'll lose the entire cluster. The other one is, and I'm going to go to that one second, is the spread placement group. Strictly places a small group of instances across distinct underlying hardware to reduce correlated failure. So it's the exact opposite. And I'm going to scroll down to the spread placement group. This is what it looks like in a spread placement group. So each and every instance is put on its own rack, is deployed to its own rack, and these racks have different power sources, have different network connectivity. So if one of those fails, all the others stay alive. And that's what a spread placement group is for. If you need multiple instances inside of a single availability zone, but you want to make sure that they are not all affected if there is an issue with the hardware or the connectivity, you can use the spread placement group, and you can use up to 7 instances in a spread placement group. And the third one is the partition placement group. And this one spreads your instances across logical partitions such that groups of instances in one partition do not share the underlying hardware with groups of instances in a different partition. This strategy is typically used by large distributed and replicated workloads such as Hadoop, Cassandra, and Kafka. It's basically the best of both worlds. You have clusters spread across multiple racks. And if I go down, here you can see that you have multiple partitions inside of the availability zone. So here you have 3 clusters, and these 3 clusters are spread like in a spread placement group. So the partition is basically the best of both worlds. But it really depends on what you actually need, on the needs of your application, what you use. I hope this was a good explanation. Let me know if there's still some questions about that. Cool. That's that. Next one. In which of the following managed services can messages be pulled by an application? A, SWF, B, SQS, C, SNS, or D, S3. What do you think? A, B, C, or D? In which of the following managed services can messages be pulled by an application? What do you think, Jack? SQS? Bruce says SQS. Anybody else? B for SQS? B, SQS. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. SQS, the Amazon SQS, Amazon Simple Queue service is, yeah, right, Tanya, exactly. Is a service where you have the application, the consumer polls, basically goes to the queue and says, I would like to have the next message. So it pulls the message. The difference to SNS, the simple notification service, is that the simple notification service is like a publish subscribe bus. So everybody who is subscribed to the bus will get all messages that are being put on the bus. So it distributes messages with everybody getting the same messages. It's a fan, like a fan. And SQS is a queue where you put a message on the queue and then you have multiple consumers. And whenever somebody consumes a message, you don't want others to consume it as well. You just want one consumer to consume, to process the message, work with it, and it's gone. And that's the difference between simple notification service and simple queue service. So SNS pushes the messages out. It's a push service, as Yosan pointed out correctly in the chat, SNS is a push service, and SQS is a pull service where consumers have to pull their data. One thing that's really important on SNS, if you put a message on SNS, it will just push the messages to all the consumers, to all the subscribers, and the message will be gone. So if somebody subscribes at a later point in time, they won't get old messages. They only will messages starting at the time when they subscribed. The difference to SQS, the queue, messages are being persisted on the queue. So as long as nobody picks up the message up to a certain amount of time, as long as nobody picks up the message, it stays on the queue. And if somebody picks up the message, and this is how queues work, if somebody picks up the message to make sure that nobody else picks up the same message, the message is made invisible, which is called the visibility timeout. And you can set that, and you can say, okay, it will probably take the consumer maybe 500 milliseconds or 5 seconds to process a message. So I want it to be invisible to other consumers for 5 seconds or maybe for 10 seconds, just to be sure. But if the consumer doesn't respond back because maybe it crashed or ran into an error or whatnot, gets stuck somehow, you still want to make sure that the message is being processed, but the queue will never know if the consumer actually was able to successfully process the message. If the consumer doesn't respond back and actually deletes the message on the queue because it has successfully processed it, the message becomes visible again after the visibility timeout and for the next consumer to pick it up again. And this is how we make sure that queues deliver guarantee delivery of your message, because if a consumer doesn't explicitly delete the message after having processed it, it becomes visible again. And that's a very important feature. SNS does not have that. But there are many patterns, there are many communication and messaging patterns where you can plug SNS and SQS together to create greater patterns, basically. SWF stands for Simple Workflow Service. And actually, I think Simple Workflow Service isn't that much used anymore since we have step functions. However, there are still a lot of applications that do use it. And S3, as you probably all know, stands for Simple Storage Service. And Simple Storage Service has a messaging component. So it has events, so you can have it fire events, but it doesn't need to be pulled from S3. That's that. Let's get to the last question. In which order does traffic flow from an on-premises site to a VPC when a VPN connection is used? There are 3 parts involved. The customer gateway, the VPC, and the virtual private gateway. And the question here is, in what order are these 3 things in a connection between an on-premises site and the VPC? Which one is it? A, B, C, or D? It's your turn again, chat. Oh, it's empty. Bruce says D, customer gateway, virtual private gateway, VPC. D. Thumbless says D. Yeah, right. That's true. I think, yeah, Pankaj, you're right. So what do we have? We have the VPC on one side, and we have the internal network, the on-premises network on the other side, and we want to connect the two. So to connect the two, you have the virtual private gateway as the connection point on the VPC, and you have the customer gateway as a connection point on the on-premises network. So you go from the on-premises network through the customer gateway, which is an appliance on the customer side, to the virtual private gateway into the VPC. So it's customer gateway, virtual private gateway, VPC. That's correct. Now, Chad, a bonus question. Do you know what happens between the customer gateway and the virtual private gateway? What is being set up between the customer gateway and the virtual private gateway in order to create a VPN connection? What's that called? The thing that's being created there. Any idea in the chat? Yeah, VPC endpoint, so you can toss AND. That's right. No, endpoint's not right. Private link, nope. No. And this is not specific to AWS. You've got this in every VPN. What I'm asking for, you've got this in every VPN, not just AWS. Right, Pankaj is correct. It's called a tunnel. It's called an IP, specifically an IPsec tunnel. I put that in the chat, an IPsec tunnel. That is basically the encrypted connection between the customer gateway and the virtual private gateway. There, we set up an encrypted connection, and this encrypted connection goes over IP through a tunnel. And how many tunnels do we set up for a site-to-site VPN connection? Do you know that? How many tunnels do we set up? Any idea how many tunnels? Siva tunnel, exactly right, yes. How many tunnels do we have in a site-to-site VPN connection to AWS? Any ideas? Any guesses? Dominic says 2. Anybody else? Different opinions? I hope not, because Dominic is right. It's 2. So for high availability reasons, we set up 2 tunnels. So it's 2 tunnels between the virtual private gateway. Yeah, your guess is 2, and your guess is right, Pankaj. It's 2 tunnels between the customer gateway and the virtual private gateway, just for high availability reasons, because if one breaks down, we have another one. And even if you use something like direct connection, like basically a hardware connection to AWS, it is still recommended to have a VPN connection as a backup. If your VPC is connected to both a direct connection and a site-to-site VPN, it automatically uses the direct connection. Unless it's not available, then it automatically falls back on VPN. So even if you use Direct Connect, you should still have a VPN connection. And another thing that's really important with Direct Connect is not automatically encrypted. It is not a VPN connection. It is just a dedicated line between you, your network, and AWS. So if you're using Direct Connect, you still have to create a tunnel for secure communication. That is something that still needs to be done, just as an interesting piece of information. Great. I think we're through all. I've got another one. I just let me see. It has just been published today, almost 2 hours ago. Or has it? I think we should have number 24 somewhere. I can't really. Let me see. Let me see where it is. And if you have any more questions, please let me know. I'm asking you a favor, and for you, I'm not going to raffle any codes today, but you will all get a code if you want, because I would like to ask you, because AWS and Amazon, we are a data-driven company. And I would like to know how you like this show. I've just posted a link where you can fill out a quick survey to let me and my team know how you like this and how well I'm doing. Apart from the technical issues, please don't fill out how my computer is doing. Let me know how I'm doing, how you like it, because as I said, we are a data-driven company. We try to understand our customers. We really try to understand what we can improve. So please fill this out. And if you do, you will automatically get a voucher of AWS credits worth $25. And I hope that's okay for everyone. Some of you already won credits, and unfortunately, even if you do so, you won't be able to use multiple of these credits for the same account. However, you're free to use them for different accounts or give them to friends or anybody. So please fill out the survey. It's really helpful for me, so that I know what I can improve, and everybody who does that gets a voucher of credits. Please do that within the next 10 to 15 minutes, because I'm going to take it down, because if somebody watches this tomorrow on YouTube, I can't give out 100 credits. So, please fill this out within the next 10 to 15 minutes, because I'm going to turn this off afterwards. But now, while you do that, let me see. I've got this one. Here it is. It is public, but it didn't show me. Here's the next one. All right, Bruce, will you be doing the Developer Associate quiz, or have you done one previously? No, I haven't. I've just started with this one a few weeks ago. This quiz leans on mostly the questions for Solutions Architect Associate, but they are not exclusive to that one. So everything we talk about here is applicable to the Developer Associate as well. Maybe not as much in detail as it is for the Solutions Architect. But what I would recommend anyway is try and study for the Solutions Architect Associate. And I've got a video. I've got a video where I'm recommending copy link address. I'll put that here. I've got a video where I go through my thought process, how I did go through my own certification, but what I also would recommend how to go through. And one of those things is to maybe start with the Solutions Architect Associate, because this gives you so much knowledge across the platform that it's much simpler to then pass the Developer Associate or the Sysadmin Associate. So with the Solutions Architect Associate, you really have a broad knowledge. Question: should we expect similar questions, or would they be more in depth? What do you mean with the Developer Associate? In the Developer Associate, they're a little bit different, because they're more about how to build applications using AWS Lambda, using DynamoDB, and so forth. And this one, the Solutions Architect Associate, is more around how to build architectures, how to architect for the cloud, what's important, what services we have, what benefits they have, what downsides they have, how to choose them. Cool. So have a look at the video I just posted. That's the AWS certification guide that I just posted a few days ago. And I also have, let me see, I just published this one today. We've got a new question. New question is live. Please, if you enjoyed this, fill out the survey. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. It's a lot of fun for me. I totally enjoy the fact that every time I put out a new video, I immediately have comments underneath the video with the answers. Most of the time the answers are correct, and I'm sure that you really, really, really work hard to understand how that works. If you're up for a certification soon, good luck. Let me know how it goes. Please like this video, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Goodbye. I can turn that off. Thank you. And thanks to all the new viewers. There are a couple of people who I haven't seen before. It's great to see new faces or read from new faces every now and then. Take care. Have a nice weekend. Goodbye.